any viable business, it shouldn't take a very long time to realize, hey, either the market is not responding or people are just not ready for the product that we're providing.
At what point did you realize it's looking like it's not going to work?
I think a big indicator for me is like it just not making money. If there was one big thing that I would change, would be that. I think staying as close to the problem and the market that you're trying to work with, I think that would have made a world of a difference. I think there could have been a lot more time spent in the actual ideation before launching straight into action and being like, okay, let's build.
What has failure taught you?
I'm still learning.
Is there anything as failure or setback?
I think setback is a very, very good word.
Today's guest, it's not just a co-founder, but a brother in arms. Born in Zambia, Jospeh journey took him from watching his father struggle and eventually succeed in business to building a career in data engineering, music, and entrepreneurship. Together, we launched Beylearning, a project that taught us more through failure than success. In this conversation, we pull back the curtain on what it means to dream big, fail hard, and keep moving. Jospeh,
Yes.
welcome to Becoming a CEO.
Thank you.
First of all, how are you?
Doing okay.
Now, I'd like you to think about it before you respond, all right? How are you?
Managing.
Now, when you say managing, what do you mean by managing?
I think thinking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the natural Australian way. We've gotten so accustomed to just answering, I'm doing fine, right?
Isn't that like a
manage-
cliche?
Not really. I think it's mostly people not trying to connect by not providing an authentic answer. So when I say managing, I'd say I think I'm doing good. But yeah, I guess life is happening and I'm doing the best that I can.
So when you say life is happening, can you shed more light into that, or you just want to?
Just life in general, just coasting through life. Life is not bad. Life is not excellent, and I'm doing okay. Is where I'm at. Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Zambia?
It's I'm trying to come up with some sort of intelligent way of answering what it was like growing up home, right? When that home is the only home that I knew. I would say it was good. I had a good family growing up, good models, went to good schools. I think relatively good schools. Yeah, so I think life was normal in my eyes for someone that would be growing up in Africa.
So give me an example when you say normal, because I think that would be really subjective for you. What could have been normal to you might well not be normal for many people. So what was normal like?
Normal for me is growing up in a household where you've got both parents. Both parents are working. You've got siblings. Normal for me also means having lots of relatives around, growing up with lots of cousins in the house, being in touch with extended family and just growing around family, going through school. So that was.
What was your
definition
earliest
of
influences? growing up?
earliest influences? I would say my parents. By influences, I think the thing that comes to mind is who were the first people that encouraged me to dream, right? And think beyond just, I guess, like a regular life. Like, like you go to school, go to university, finish university, you work and, get married. But I think the first people that gave me inspiration to think bigger of myself and to think bigger for myself and what I wanted to do in future would be my parents. I lived in a household, like we weren't like rich growing up, right? My mom was a teacher, retired now. My dad, for as long as I've known, has always been in business. I would say seeing them get through life and go through like what would be otherwise challenging, like not making a lot of money and having to fend for a household that had like a lot of kids in it, and also looking after extended family as is normal for an African household. I think for me, seeing them go through that and then get to the end of it and enjoy like the fruits of their labor and like everything that they worked hard for was very, very inspiring for me. Even if they didn't say it, I think just observing them go through life was very, very inspiring for me.
We've had quite a few conversations because we've done a few work together, and you've always mentioned that in most of these conversations, especially relating to business. All right, at what age were you when Dad left his job, when if he ever worked, all right, and went into business? And I believe you would have seen a few ups and downs. All right.
Yeah.
So at what age were you? Did you understand what was happening at the time? And if you did, what was life seeing him fail and still pick himself up and keep pushing? What was it like?
So I had this conversation with my dad, right? Because my earliest memories of life don't include that transition from like dad working to him switching over to business. So the way it's been told to me and my understanding is that before I was born, I have an older sibling and older cousins and the like that have lived with us. So my dad worked in mining for a very, very long time, did really, really well there. This was prior to me coming into the family. And then at a certain point, I think he realized he wanted more out of life than working for someone else. I'm not sure what the industry was like or what the exact like triggers were for him to move into business, but my understanding is that that's something that he wanted to do even before I came into the picture. So my earliest memories, I don't know. I don't remember that transition. Again, it happened before me, right? So my only knowledge of my dad, if we're talking business, has always been he's a businessman. I think up until maybe early secondary school, that's around like year 8 or so, or late like primary school was when I was like, oh yeah, dad used to work for someone else, you know. But yeah, that's my earliest memory.
Did you ever see him struggle or express failure? I mean, I don't know if there's any such thing like that, but like everyone in business, there'll be times when things ain't good. So my dad, at some point, he never did business. He was always a civil servant. And we've always known him to be a civil servant of the government. So each time there was a raise or things got better at work, we noticed that at home because there was more money to spend. We either upgraded house or we got better clothes or we were able to buy a TV because maybe dad got this bonus or things like that. Did you ever experience anything like that? Were there times also when you all of a sudden realize, okay, maybe there was not enough money this month or this year and we had to manage or stuff like that?
Interesting. So I've got two different perspectives, right? Like one is my experience of what life was like at home when I was a kid versus now being an adult and being able to have conversations with my dad to essentially find out what life was actually like. Because when you're growing up, you don't really know. I can think of moments where I would either visit like a extended family or friends, and they would, back in the day, like a PS1 or a PS2, right? And then I'd be thinking to myself, wait, why don't we have that, right? And then you ask for it, and then it's not there. Now that's not a bad thing, that we didn't have that, but it's those little things that you notice, like, oh yeah, life for us is a little bit different than somewhere else. And growing up, because of the way our home was structured, like birthdays were a very big thing, right? Like whenever it's a birthday, there's cake without fail, right? Whenever there's something special to celebrate, like love was there, right? So even if we didn't have luxuries, right? that's not something that made a difference, if that makes sense. So on reflection, I don't know if I, growing up, experienced or realized like, oh yeah, it's a hard time at home. We actually don't have any money now, right? Or business is hard, right, this month, or maybe dad is staying late to make sure that this deal goes through so that we can have this thing the next month, right? So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers.
Would you say him being a business person has influenced some of your decisions towards or for wanting to become an entrepreneur or venturing into entrepreneurship? And how would you say that was him has influenced you in that way? There was an influence, sort of.
I would say definitely. I can't think of any early influences where I saw someone doing business and it impacted me a lot. So again, growing up, like I said, my dad as well is in business, right? And from a very, very young age, as far back as I can remember, like 7, 8-ish or so, I remember finishing school, and instead of going straight home, would like go and hang out. My young brother and I would go and hang out with dad at the office, and would be there from like 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. until whenever we went home around 8 p.m. So that was the life that was my understanding of what work was, right? Like it's either you're running your own business or like my mom, you're serving people, you're a teacher. So I would say that was a big influence. That's been a big influence in my desire for like independence, and also seeing like being an entrepreneur, like we're going to talk about, is difficult, right? But the freedom that it gives you to make your own decisions and like do life on your own terms is
Does it actually give freedom?
It depends. It depends how you define freedom, right?
What's your definition of freedom?
I think the ability to make consequential decisions for yourself, if that makes sense. I don't have a better description for it, but yeah, I think the ability to make decisions for yourself. I can think of, so I work in corporate now, right? I can't just up and leave, right? And decide, okay, for the next 2 months, I'm not doing anything. That's not going to fly, right? You need to work with leave and all of that. But being an entrepreneur, there's freedom. It's a lot of risk, right? But the freedom that's there is you can stop, you can pivot anytime, right? You're free to start again with very little. You don't have to think about stuff.
I think what my takeaway from that would be consequential decisions. Because while you're free to decide, there are consequences.
Yes.
I often ask myself, I say this to myself, while, I love to manage my time, but also that also means you don't have guaranteed income.
Exactly. Or you have no time.
Or you have no time. Right. You understand? So while you won't get the freedom to roam around the streets, you're probably not earning. You understand? So it's just a trade-off. You then decide, so which one would I rather go for? Be able to, use my time the way I want to use it. So I want to use my time. I want to do A, B, C, D. Perhaps one of those will succeed. Or I want to go work for somebody and do A for the rest of my life. You understand? Just stay on maybe 80, 100, 120K, 200K per year for God knows how long. I guess the way I define it as well, or the way I see it as well, I could go do stuff with my time, and instead of earning maybe 50K, I could earn 30K this year, and next year maybe 70K, and then the upper year I could do 500K, and then like that. So it gives me the opportunity to take chances, and perhaps one of them would succeed.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Look, going into business, there's a question I've always wanted to ask you. It's Beylearning. So Beylearning pretty much. So Beylearning is it's very interesting, right? All right. One of the questions I wanted to ask was, why did you, when I pitched Beylearning, why did you say yes?
I think the idea made sense. If I can backtrack to how we got to that point, right? So, cut to COVID, right? Everyone's working, and then all of a sudden the world shuts down, right? So one of the other things that I do on the side is music, right? For me, it's a hobby. It's not something that I'm chasing as like a career. But I do have lots of friends in music, right, who do that full time, and that's literally their bread and butter. So cut to COVID when everything shut down. I thought to myself, like, how are people going to make money, right, in this period? I'm seeing my friends not have any money. So I thought of an idea to come up with a business that was going to address that problem. And in my mind, I was thinking, who of everyone that I know, this is clearly something that I can't take off the ground on my own, right? And that's when I reached out. I think initially it was a phone call, or it might have been a text or something. And then I sent an email saying, hey, we should catch up and talk about this problem. So we kicked that off. And then within a very, very short time, we understood what it was going to take to actually get that off the ground, and how feasible it was for where we were at, and the resources that we had available to us. So that idea was, canned. And then I think you came back and said, well, we can't do that, but here's a problem, and let me know what you think, right? So the problem statement for us was, well, if you think about the career paths that a lot of people jump on, right? A lot of us go to university, right? Study, you could be like a doctor, engineer. I'm an engineer myself, right? And then end up working in a career that is either adjacent or very, very far off from there, right? How do people make that pivot, right? You find information, find a platform that is going to guide you on that path. You pick an interest and you essentially end up that way, right? And we thought to ourselves, why not build something for Africa that is skill-based, right? With the intention of empowering people. Again, key thing, empowering people, because we saw that was something that, well, for me, in the conversation that we had, that's something that resonated very heavily with me, because I did engineering, a different type of engineering, somewhat semi-adjacent to the data engineering that I'm doing now. But the thing that ended up pushing me on this career path was just doing research. I picked on a skill that I was like, in my unemployedness and my job hunting, I stumbled upon a skill that I was like, oh yeah, I think this could look interesting. What is data engineering? What is business intelligence is what it was called at the time. And all I did was just read books, do projects, and go through what essentially what a boot camp, like a coding boot camp would give you, but on my own, right? And so when the idea to me was pitched to say, hey, we could actually build something that would help someone in a similar boat to the way that we were, even while they're in Africa. So I for me, that was the big yes that was a major drive to saying yes, is we can build something that is empowering. It connects with where we both are and where we've both found success, and what our path was to that. So,
What moments about all of this made you feel more alive?
Again, biggest driver being empowering someone else, and also recognizing myself in the problem, right?
Did you ever think it was the right solution for the time?
I was convinced it was. I think... I don't know how I would have said yes to it if I didn't believe that it was a solution.
Have you ever thought in your head, why didn't it work? Have you had time to think through that?
Yes and no. I think there's... I don't know if there is like a time frame that would be enough to pinpoint exactly, like in totality, this is what made it not work. Okay. But I think I've got very good ideas based off of like the reflections and conversations that we've had, as to what are some of the factors that made it not work. Yeah.
I'll take it back a bit, just for those that are viewing that don't know what Beylearning is all about. What was the problem we've identified. What was the solution we brought to the table? So if you could just, in a nutshell, what was Beylearning about? For those that watch it, I don't know what Beylearning is all about.
Okay, so Beylearning was a platform that was built essentially to simplify learning. If you can think of any skill that you could ever want, the idea was that we would capture whatever the essence of that skill, like everything that you need to be able to have that skill, package it in a course in a very, very simplistic manner, and deliver it to people that actually needed it.
What was the problem statement?
I would say there were multiple problems that we're trying to solve with the same solution. One is access to actual structured content that would push you in the right direction. That's one. But then also looking at, I think we were also looking at where Africa is essentially going to be positioned in where the world is moving, right? And what is the right platform that would give people the right skills to be able to succeed in the future that we're heading into. So I would say for me, that's the problem that I saw we're trying to solve there.
And the solution was obviously Beylearning.
Beylearning, a platform that simplifies learning and delivers it in a simple, well, and easy to understand format that it would take someone from not knowing programming, for instance, to coming out at the end of it with a skill that they can essentially start either applying for work for, or do like their own freelancing gigs as well.
So we talk about entrepreneurship. Oftentimes people see the glitz and glamour of course, the successful ones. But even before they became successful, they've gone through many dark nights, many sleepless nights. And like I did say in my intro, moments you really can't post online, but they did exist.
Yeah.
You understand? And of course, some succeed. A very handful of those succeed. Many of them will fail and you never hear the story. What was it like for yourself, you know, seeing Beylearning slipping away gradually? At what point did you realize it's looking like it's not going to work?
I think it might resonate with people that do business, right? I think a big indicator for me is like it just not making money, right? Any viable business, I think it shouldn't take a very long time to realize, hey, either the market is not responding or people are just not ready for the product that we're providing, and that's why there's no money coming in. I think that's an objective indicator outside of, I mean, being an entrepreneur, you're generally very, very hopeful, right? Even a lot more than the people that are working for you, because you connect with the vision, you see where this thing is heading, and you want to do everything that you can to make sure that vision comes alive. But I think the objective truth is, for me, it lies in where the market and how people respond to the product.
So apart from it not making money, what else? I mean, we've seen startups and businesses that the first couple of years, they probably weren't making money. They were probably losing money. But there have been other indicators of success that could have said, okay, no, we're not making money now, but we're having X, Y, Z, some of these metrics have been met and things like that. So we can say, yeah, let's keep pushing. Was it just all about not making money, or was there something else
I think not making money is, it's an objective truth, it's an objective indicator of like everything else that is happening underneath, right? One of the things that I reflect on, it's almost like some sort of cognitive dissonance in your brain, right? To where you deliver a product and then you get a response from some people and they're like, this is the one thing that has changed my life. I can think of moments where we've had a look at reviews or like sat in on webinars at the end of a course and get feedback. Like, oh, this is really, really good. A big thing for me, even with that, again, I express this as like cognitive dissonance, because on one hand you've got someone saying that it's really really good. On the other hand, you have to think of, okay, how is this going to scale with the model that we came up with and also the vision that we had? Is the climate that we're playing in, as in the African market that we're trying to play in, is this going to value the product that we're providing to the point where it's a sustainable business? Because again, I think success is one thing to want to have, right? Like monetary success, but even more so, I think for me, knowing that we built something that had impact and could sustain itself long term was key. So if on one hand you get like, I would call it that anecdotal evidence, right? Where you only have very few people that are confirming like your vision and like the way you see things. And then you look at things grand scale and be like, well, the way that this is trending, I'm not seeing people respond in the way that they're meant to this product, right? So I think it's a lot of that again, cognitive dissonance that plays on your mind, and you're like, I don't know if this is heading in a sustainable path to where it would stand long term. Even if we pivoted, I'm not sure how this is sustainable, you know.
So with this experience, I mean, this must have been very tough for yourself, I guess, for myself as well. I'm just the one asking the question. I'm sure if we reverse this rule, you probably ask me. But that aside, how has this impacted you? So impact in the sense that now you're an entrepreneur, right? You want to go into this, you love doing this, but then going through this failure, how was that impact mentally for yourself? And how has that affected or impacted your decision to want to proceed as an entrepreneur?
Mentally, I think it really messes with your mind, right? I think the first thing that I tried to work against was like making it feel, or dealing with the feeling of like this is a very, very personal failure. There's clearly something that I've done wrong, to the point where it can start to define like how I feel about myself. Like when I wake up in the morning, am I feeling like I'm someone that can be successful at doing something? People talk about imposter syndrome, right? So there's like the huge imposter syndrome while you're doing the thing, but then when you get a negative result at the end, I think that can be like a very heavy burden to where it feels like it's validating the imposter syndrome, right? So it's very, very disheartening, I think, being on the tail end of something that's failed.
I think many people do not appreciate what that impact would be. I don't think people understand what it does mean to fail. Not many people can handle failure. There are very few people that can handle failure. I personally, I think it did hit me very well. I remember asking myself, have I failed? Just like you said, oftentimes you all have imposter syndrome one way or the other. You're going to have this thing coming to you, playing in your head, you're not the right person for this and things like that. And then seeing yourself fail at something can sometimes reinforce that thought and that thinking that says, it's not supposed to be you. You're not meant for this and stuff like that. And it does impact us significantly. And I mean, saying this to people, anyone watching, it is real. Imposter syndrome is real. You understand? But how do you manage that? What will be my next question to you. I would like you to share with us how you manage that. And maybe I could share. For me personally, I'm a go person. All right, once an idea comes, the good ones, obviously, build on them. The negative ones, try to dispel them as quickly as possible. And how do I dispel them? I go out to prove myself again. So by prove myself again, I go pick up another project. Perhaps I think I can do better. You understand? And then by doing that, I can say to myself, I think I can still do this. And one key example was, because when we finished Beylearning, not like we finished, but when we came to that point, when we came to that point and all of this happened, this became the next thing I needed to get into. Of course, there are a few other things I wanted to do, but I thought, okay, how best can I rebuild? How best can I get stuff started again? Personally, for me, I thought, aside the many, many things that went wrong, I felt we didn't have a marketing strategy wasn't good enough.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Idea fantastic. Cost of acquiring clients, customers was just on the roof. And I thought, okay, if I personally could build an audience, a loyal audience, then you could essentially sell to them any other thing you have. So while Beylearning is still there, paused at the moment, it could then become something that could come up again sometime in the future if you've built another. So for me, in order to get myself back again, so instead of going, let's go start something else, I was like, no, I'll put my voice out there, I'll build an audience, and then every other thing would then go from there. Those are one of the ways I, personally for me, I've been able to manage Imposter. And this thing is something I do best. Like any day, anytime, I would do good. I would do well. So nothing can play in my head to say, oh, you're not good at this, you're not good at this. Because this one, I know this one.
Yeah.
You understand? But anyway, I'll let you share.
I think I might have heard something from Jordan Peterson. I can't remember who it was exactly, but they were talking about imposter syndrome. And one of the
Sorry, before you go,
yeah,
I'd like to explain what is actually imposter syndrome. Let's break that down.
I don't know if I'm qualified to explain it down to a science.
Simple.
But in my experience, I think it's feeling like you don't belong, right? Even so, I'll give you an example. You could be the best car designer in the world, right? And imposter syndrome could show up as you see a scratch on something, or you design something that's a little bit off, and you use that small piece of evidence to define the whole thing, the whole product in itself, and say that is a reflection on this whole thing, and therefore it's a reflection on me that I am not good enough to design this properly. That's the simplest way that I would put it. In saying that, the piece of advice that I've lived by, I think throughout my career, because I think it was a very, very big thing for me starting out here as well in corporate, because again, like you're an outsider, you're black, you're stepping into an environment that's predominantly white, right? And that can, for me, I think I experienced not to a great deal to where it's crippling, as in it's stopping you from doing work, or preventing you from doing a good job, right? Like inferiority complex. Like I didn't have access to like computers or like the same experiences that people growing up in, like, and on this side of the world had. But yeah, to my point before I was rambling, the piece of advice that I've tried to live by is collecting like evidence to the fact that you're not an imposter, right? You can tell when you've done a good job. It's objective, right? It's right there in front of you that this is good. I've got positive feedback from people that this is the right thing and this is good. And that's essentially what I use to try and beat imposter syndrome and feeling like I don't belong. It's much easier to fight that feeling when you've got actual evidence built up in front of you.
So essentially, you go back to the ones you've done before that you did well.
Yes. Yeah.
And that helps you fight.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about that a lot. I'll just go back a bit. Now, what did you learn from that story that has helped you navigate this? I wouldn't want to say this was a failure moment, even though in many cases it could be time to be failure. In our head, it could also be time that's failure.
Or maybe we just haven't accepted that it was a failure as well, right?
Maybe I choose not to accept that it's a failure. You understand? But how has that experience as a business person helped you navigate this journey? Or did you have a conversation with him about this in particular?
Not this specific thing, but I have spoken to my dad to try and understand. Big question that I've always had for him was, growing up, like after leaving home, I can reflect back and like have conversations with him, and I can think back now that I'm much older and be like, oh yeah, I think home was hard sometimes, right? Or like dad is staying out really late because he's trying to make things happen for us. So I think a big question that I had for him was like, what kept you sane, right? Like you're a married man, you've got a family to take care of, you've got kids. got extended family that's depending on you, and you've got a business that you're trying to build on the side, and more often than not, it's failing, right? Like there's things that are not working out, either out of your own volition, like you either can't do something, or like people aren't responding to the product in the way that you and yeah, I don't know if there is an easy answer besides just fighting through it, right? I think one of the things that inspired me from that conversation was having a very, very strong conviction about the direction that you're heading in. I think that makes all the difference, because it's the thing that is going to hold you when you have to stay up late, right? It's the thing that is going to hold you when you know that, okay, I'm going to have to make a decision between putting whatever money that I have, saving it up for like this thing that would be like super safe and secure, versus pouring that into a business, right? I think just having that strong conviction, and honestly, again, just building those small wins, right? Building some sort of positive bias. Whenever you've got a win, like ride on that and let it hold you through like the failures.
What has failure taught you?
I'm still learning. I'm not sure if it's a radical thing to say that I'm not sure if failure actually is a thing, right? Is it really a failure if you?
I think it might be a mindset, and then
yeah,
it could be seen as a mindset. So to some, it could be a setback, not necessarily a failure. Or do you believe in such thing as failure anyway? Is there anything as failure or a setback?
I think setback is a very, very good word, because in my mind I'm thinking failure is absolute downfall and there is no return. Like you've literally failed, right? Kind of like getting an F at school. You failed and like you just not met the mark and there's no way to go back. Yeah,
it's okay to say it is setback, but I think there are situations that we could term as failure. All right, I mean, if you use the F9, yeah, it is failure, but I could still go back to school.
True. Again, yeah. In that sense, it makes sense. On reflecting on Beylearning, right? If we can call it a failure, my processing of whatever that is, I am at the point where I'm trying to pick out like all the lessons that I picked up from that. Again, like I've gone through, did I do something wrong? Like, were we actually the right people to bring this idea to life? Is this a reflection on me, or is it a reflection on the idea? Is it a reflection on the vision? I'm to be honest, still going through the motions of learning what that impact has been. I don't think it stopped me from wanting to try again.
If you were going to do it differently, if you're going to do it again, what would you do differently?
One of the things that we've spoken about is we've asked ourselves the question, would it have still turned out the same if we were in Africa, like building this from there, right? And I think that would have added a lot of mileage on what we're trying to achieve. If there was one big thing that I would change, would be that. I think staying as close to the problem and the market that you're trying to work with, I think that would have made a world of a difference. Now, again, that is my hopeful entrepreneurial mind speaking, but I think that would have made a huge difference, because I can think of all the conferences we could have gone to, or the connections that we would have tried to build, or the marketing efforts that would have required us to like literally be there, and it would have made a difference. How much? I don't know. Hindsight is 2020. In the moment, right? Like you're not really thinking about those things. You're trying to solve one problem today, right? And solve the problem for tomorrow, and still maintain like that big picture. So, yeah, hindsight being 2020, I think that's something that I
What
would
else would they have done
change.
differently apart from being in close proximity to the problem? So if you can, that's one. What's the second one? I'll just stick them.
So another thing that I have thought of, and again, we've had a conversation about this, right? Like you pay for what you don't know. Early on, maybe I might backtrack a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, you pay for what you don't know. I can remember early on in the process where we were very, very hot in the vision and hot on the idea of building this platform. And I didn't have the expertise at the time, right, to build a platform like that. So even though I was someone that was technical, could have happened, but would have built the world's ugliest looking Beylearning that could have happened for the scale that we're looking at launching at. So what did we do? We spent money, right, and it was a lot of money to get the idea off the ground. Now, I think a reflection, and this is a conversation that we had, just to that specific point, this is a reflection that I've had and I've shared, where we had met someone like trying to build the idea before, who said, instead of rushing to build this platform, actually think deeply about what you want to build. Like, make sure that your thinking and like the vision that you have for this product is so clear in your mind that would be very easy to communicate it to someone. I think that would have reduced the number of iterations that would have had to gone through. It's very tempting. Again, hindsight is 2020. In the moment, you're not thinking about it, right? You think I've got all the information that I need right now, and I'll act on it and progress to the next step. But hindsight being 2020, I think there could have been a lot more time spent in the actual ideation before launching straight into action and being like, okay, let's build. Good lessons were learned from that, but I think it's painful lessons as opposed to lessons on the back end of success saying, we did the right thing and so we should replicate this next time. I think that's something that I definitely won't do again.
Friendship and business. What does all of this teach you about friendship and loyalty? So we had a team of 9 of us and about another 9 instructors. So we're like 18 of us. Before the friendship one, what were you thinking around? So I remember when we sat down, we talked about, letting go of these guys. I mean, they were employees. They had salaries and stuff, of course, and they had people earning. It's just like a family chain. You're paying this person, but then they're being cascaded down. What was it like carrying this burden on yourself and letting these people go? So I remember sitting down in my head and I was like, well, 2 of them, I knew them personally, of course. And then the other ones, I don't need them personally, but then they're still employees. And it was a lot of burden, to be honest, having to say to this young man, I had to call him personally, like, Lee, this is what's going to happen in the next couple of days. I don't know how you're going to do it, but this is going to happen. And I remember him just going quiet on the phone. It was a lot. I didn't know what to say to him. I made some promises, but it was just me saying in the moment, look, it's going to be fine. It's gonna
Pacifying
be fine.
the situation.
Yeah, but I also know it wasn't going to be fine. What was that like for yourself, carrying that burden on?
It's a hard one. I think that's like the reality of something like that, right? Happening is you build, again, going back to like the hopeful nature of an entrepreneur, like you build a company and like you're really, really hopeful. You bring people on without thinking in the moment. I guess like I don't even know if that's like a mental burden that you should have at the point when you're bringing people into the business. But these are people that are literally banking on the success of the company, right? Like they will adjust their plans for their lives and think, hey, this is a company that I can stay in for the next 10 years. This is how I'm going to get rich. This is how I'm going to fend for my family, right? And then to think about, this is like, we pay these people, right? potentially not doing any other work, right? If this ends, then we're essentially throwing them into a volatile market where for some, like, they might not be able to find work as easily. It's hard. It's hard. And I don't say that to request any sympathy, because I'm not in that position, right? Like, we're obviously in a different place in the world, but it's a very, 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 very heavy burden. It'll keep you up at night trying to think of, today was the day that people were meant to be getting paid, and someone is potentially not getting paid. Right? Yeah, it can keep you up at night. Yeah, I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't married. Yeah.
Friendship, loyalty. It takes that too to build a business. How did you manage that? You had a team, obviously, and in quote, they were loyal to you.
Firstly, I that's not something that I take for granted, personally. Again, to that point, like, the vision was ours as co-founders, and these people are literally, they're trusting you with their efforts and everything. So their loyalty is not something that I take for granted. Yeah. I think it's very, very valuable in building something like that, because you want people that are going to literally be there with you through the fire, right? Building a startup is not easy. I can think of some months where, not said or implied, but you'd be thinking to yourself, hey, we're not making any money. We need to find money to pay people, right? And knowing that your team is doing the best that they can, and they understand, like, to a certain extent, like, again, not stated in word, but implied, and like from people understanding, hey, this is where money is coming from. You can tell that people are working really hard to make sure that the problem is solved. So yeah, I don't know, that loyalty is something that I valued a lot in that experience. Yeah. And I mean, you build friendships with people, right? Even through that experience. It's kind of like going through a war together, right? That's something that bonds you, and it's really, really hard to break, I think.
It's ready to venture.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm still very hopeful. I'm a corporate man. I think that will continue for me for a while. But business is something that again, looking at my dad and seeing everything that he's been able to do for himself, I think it's something that I'm still inspired to do in whatever shape or form, big or small, whatever opportunities come. I think it's something that I would be.
Have you ever thought about going back to work for dad? Has he invited you?
We've maybe not had that conversation.
I don't understand.
Yeah. It's open at the moment.
Do you see yourself doing that?
I don't know at this stage.
What's his business? What's he into?
So the core part of the business is in metal recycling. So he runs a foundry, right? Essentially an engineering business, and what they do is grab like different types of metal, melt that, and then build spare parts out of it, from it. So supporting mostly like engineering companies, and then there's some direct to consumer products as well that they produce from there. Yeah.
And you don't see yourself in his shoes anytime soon?
I don't know. That's an open conversation.
Are you the first son?
Yes.
You're the first son?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm asking, yeah?
I know exactly what you're asking. But that's an open conversation at the moment. Yeah.
What are you building next?
Building my life back. I think the last few years have been very, very taxing, in terms of time, in terms of the mental engagement that's required. I think of something that I've been, I guess, thinking about a lot lately, just as a concept, is opportunity cost. Right, in my mind, I think of what would I have been doing over that few years where I would get from work, finish work, have dinner, and then spend a few hours on my laptop trying to build this thing, right? Be in meetings at night and the like. Yeah, there's opportunity cost, right, that you don't really think about going into something like that, of being like, well, if I'm doing this, then there's something else that I'm clearly not doing. And
I think many of us do not understand what opportunity cost truly means. You understand? And I'd like you to shed more light on that meaning. What is actually opportunity cost? Because you just said, look, doing this, you could have, just the same thing. You're sitting down here now.
Yeah.
There's probably 1,001 things you could be doing.
Exactly.
That might potentially make you money, or at least, if not, sleep on your bed.
Yeah.
But you're here. So you're paying a price.
Yeah.
So what is opportunity cost?
In my mind, I think of like the simplest way to think about it is using that example that you've just mentioned, right? If you make a decision to do one thing, you're also making a decision to not do anything else that could equally be as important or could give you the same opportunity in future, right? So in my mind, over the last 3 years or so, I think to myself, like, I love data engineering, right? I love what I do. Where would I be if I had been spending those few hours at night trying to further my career over that? Again, it's a conscious decision that was made at the point to be like, this is what I would want to pursue. But that's a reflection that I'm processing at the moment.
Financially as well. No, we've not talked about finance and what to that had. Because I was watching. It was a podcast. I can't remember who. It was Steve was trying to explain what opportunity cost, and he gave an analogy about with $100. So you've got $100 now. All right, you can either go to the restaurant and eat of this $100, have a good time, or you can invest this $100 in stock, bond, crypto, whatever it is you want to invest it in, and come back in 5 years, and that $100 will probably be 100,000, or let's say 1,000.
Yeah.
So essentially, the opportunity cost there is it is costing you not the $100 you're seeing today.
It's the investment
but
and the returns.
1,000 you're not seeing today that will be coming back to you in maybe 5 years. So eventually, you thought you spent $100, but no, you actually spent $1,000.
Yeah.
And going back to what we've just talked about, I don't know if you've naming figures there, but the figures are really large. You understand? If you look at, those monies that were put in that stuff, what could I have bought?
A house.
Jeez.
Right. It's a very, very simple question to answer, because you think of, well, that's essentially a nice deposit on a house.
Yeah.
Again, thinking about opportunity cost, these I cannot thank my wife enough for trusting me, right, to head in that direction. That's the scale of the decision that you're making, right? In understanding, okay, this is the opportunity that's being lost. Is okay, I'm going to divert funds to build out this vision, and potentially put this dream on hold for a little bit, or put like this lifestyle or this thing that we want to do on hold for a little bit, to head there. Yeah, but those numbers will keep you up at night if you're not careful.
Talking about your wife, what was her role in all of this?
The
Beylearning. Of course, I understand now. So this is something I was really proud of as well, and I knew what impact it had on myself. Of course, the time it took away from family to attend to all of this and things like that. And I keep saying, we've had this conversation many times. Thank God for the wives we have. Oh God, jeez.
Yeah.
But yeah, how is she, first of all?
She's doing fine. I think I'm lucky I married well. She understood the vision that was there, and was essentially like my backbone to like some of those days when you can't stand straight and you're like, "Ah, today was a really, really hard day. We didn't hit this milestone that we thought we were going to hit." And she'd be like, "Well, you guys you're doing everything you can, I think we had lots of conversations. There was nothing that was essentially hidden in everything that we did and all the decisions that were made. So, yeah, I think she's been very, very important in making sure that I am sane. And also I am deeply grateful for the trust that she had, or the trust that she has in me to be able to pursue something like that for that long and still be, still be here.
Thank you, Jospeh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jospeh. Is there any question that you think I didn't ask you? You'd like to?
No, you've asked me the where to from here question, and I've answered it as vaguely as it is clear in my mind at the moment.
Rapid fire question. One song that captures your journey so far?
What song?
One song that captures your journey so far.
One song. Build My Life by, I think it's Maverick City, or one of those guys. Yeah.
I've not heard that song. I'll go look up for it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you mine.
Look at the words.
Build My Life. I was listening to this song. I rise up, I rise like the giant. What's her name? Can't remember her name.
Yeah.
But you know the song I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That song made me cry. So in this my little life, I've seen many failures and setback. You understand? And there are songs you listen to. I'm very big on podcasts. And that's just one of the ways I cope as well with all of this, where I've assessed it to myself, the road will be tough, it will be hard. And so just get ready for it. And so for me, that song, the first time I heard that song and the story behind that song, so the lady, her story essentially is one of struggle, of course, many failures. And then she had just one opportunity to meet Stevie Wonder. Was Stevie Wonder? Yeah, I think it was Stevie. And that changed her whole life entirely. And that was really how she picked up and things like that, And each time I played that song, essentially it just encapsulates all of the many failures, of course, the wins, the struggles and everything I go through personally in life, but most especially in business as well. And I keep saying, I posted something to get today, the journey of an entrepreneur is anything but straight. It's always like this. And I was saying to myself, the goal is to just keep moving, all right? You're faced with struggles on a daily. You have two decisions, maybe three. You can either turn back, go, break through the obstacle, or do a detour. And a detour essentially doesn't mean you're failed. It just means, okay, now I can't break through this obstacle, I can't go back, but I could find another way to get to where I want to get to. But the goal is to just keep moving. You fall, you stand up, dust yourself, you just keep going. Just keep going. You just keep going. And that's why I say to people always, we'll see the glitz and the glamour, but just know that behind those glitz and behind those glamours, it's a lot of unspoken, untold stories that we may never find out, but they exist,
It's a true test of resilience, right?
It is actually.
I think business will reveal you to you in a very, very real and very, very confronting way.
Yeah. And sometimes you question your sanity.
Yes.
Because you're asking yourself, am I actually okay? Am I okay? You get code or clippers?
Sorry?
Code or clippers? Which one would you pick to survive?
Code
or clippers?
Code meaning?
Writing code or barbershop.
Writing code.
Are you learning how to code?
I already know how to code. Right?
Oh yeah, actually you do.
So I think that you asked me what is next. I think a big thing that I'm focusing on now is just learning how to build, so that if I ever get to that point of I want to build a product, it should be something that I should be able to get at least 90% of the actualization on my own. Because again, like I said, you pay for what you don't know. I think that was a big eye opener for me as to how bad it can get if you don't know, if you don't even know what you don't know. It's not a good place to be in.
If you could jam with one musician dead or alive, who would that be?
Oh, I've got a very, very long list. I play guitar, and I've got lots of like people that I don't know if idolize is a terrible word, but lots of people that I admire their art for. A good reach would be B.B. King.
B.B. King,
blues guy.
Great, B.B. King.
Yeah.
One book, podcast, movie that shaped you.
There's a book by a guy called Gary Chapman. Very, very inspiring. Talking about, I think I might butcher this, but my takeaway from that book is about taking a big leap, right? And believing in yourself, believing in your capability to be able to succeed.
How do one build that belief? So we keep hearing believe in yourself, but, and I say that a lot to people as well. But also I realize some people are incapable of doing that. How do one build a belief in themselves?
I think that's a very deep and introspective question. So I'm a man of faith. I'm a Christian, right? So the Bible plays a very, very important part in my life. I think the Bible identifies us as children of God. And if you can think of, if you say I'm a child of my father, you take his likeness, right? You essentially take his status. So I think for me, what that identity comes with is I'm not inferior in this world, right? If I can set my mind to do something and I know it's noble, it's not evil, it's in line with God's word, I'm not sinning by doing this, there's no reason for me not to be able to do that. But also, I think even going a step further, I think looking at, I draw inspiration from lots of people that were unlikely to succeed, right? Like if you can think of the famous story of the KFC guy. Yeah. He waited until he was in his 60s. That guy lived a terrible life. My understanding was that he was potentially living out of his car, right? And like not doing well before he got the KFC that we know and appreciate today. But it's stories like that I draw from. I can think of early memories in high school where, I'm not sure if this was common for you guys, but you'd have people that would come and do like motivational speeches, right? And say, well, this is where I used to live as a kid. Like, and then they put up a photo of them like living in like a shanty compound or something, like sleeping on the floor. And then they're like, oh yeah, well, I've got like a master's in this. I went and studied at Oxford, or I'm running a business like that. I think I draw a lot of inspiration from stories like that. And it, again, that's worked for me. It might not work for everyone, but I think drawing inspiration from places like that, most of all, I think for me, from the word of God, knowing that I am not inferior.
So for someone watching this podcast, what would you want them to take away from this conversation? And I want one of your response to include how they could build confidence, how they could build themselves, how they can start believing in themselves. So see yourself, let's picture yourself, a young man walking aimlessly. You're trying to find identity, trying to find your voice. How would you do that?
Biggest takeaway for me would be, don't be afraid to try. I think you'd surprise yourself. I know I've spoken a lot about like seeing my dad being like, in entrepreneurship and like that being very inspiring and like all of these stories around me. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is that like I tried. And even if the result didn't turn out the way that I wanted, I think I learned a lot more from that experience than I would have if I just had an idea in my head and then just sat on it, right? I think I'm a better man. I've got much more confidence in in a corporate environment, because I've run a business before. I know what life is like. On the other side, making hard decisions and making consequential decisions, not just for yourself, but for other people as well. So I'd say don't be afraid to try. You might be surprised what you find on the other side. Even if it's failure, I think you'll be better for it if you do it than not.
Don't be afraid to try. You might be surprised what you find on the other side. That's a good way to end the podcast. Jospeh, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having me.
so much for coming. Maybe I should ask, do you have any question for me?
How are you doing? Reverse podcast. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm good. Like I always say, I am trying to be all right. So this is me responding to myself by doing this. So I feel I've bottled in a whole lot. I've gone through a lot of experiences that have stuck in my head. And this is, I guess, one of the ways I believe I can let some of those experiences out. And maybe someone else can learn from it and become a better entrepreneur, a better CEO.
That's good.
Thanks so much, Jospeh. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching.